All right, so welcome into the live stream today. We're going to dive into Bitcoin, what the current market is doing, what it might look like for the month of June as we near some very interesting triggers that could be causing a little bit of a correction here in the marketplace. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. Joining me, of course, is Evan Aldo, jumping in today.
Yep, always great to be here.
Yeah, we're going to dive into a lot of stuff today, Evan. A lot of this is leaning into where Bitcoin has moved really over the holiday.
Right.
I think a lot of people anticipated Bitcoin to be a little bit flat. We got a little bit of a positive move over the weekend. Monday looked really good and started to see some action. Just to kind of jump into a couple of things on kind of the news, because I wanted to kind of review a couple pieces here. Bitcoin begins a new week by hitting the above 31K, which is an interesting point while U.S. equity, especially with equity markets still being closed, a lot of people, I think, were using the weekend, the three-day weekend to kind of trade a little bit. So interesting stuff. When you look at Bitcoin right now, Evan, and you think about the bounce that we had off of really 26, 20, well, we got the 25, but the 26, 27 was really kind of where it hovered in. In looking at that, and then, of course, looking at where we are today, almost 32 a couple of times, how does that look in the near term if you were trading this in, say, just the next 7 days?
Yeah, so it's looking definitely more bullish. I mean, the main thing that we're looking at right now is your 6-day green dot, and this is a rare bullish sign. I mean, this marked the bottom in 2018 right now. So to answer your question to trade in the next 7 days, I'll give you guys a little bit of a freebie. What I'm looking at right now definitely is a nice little swing trade. If you entered right now, it's kind of at a local high, but you know, this is more for a swing position, a long-term position a little bit. Get in right here, set your stop loss below the swing low around here, and then try to take your profits around 35K would be a big area for the next 7 days. Also, what reaffirms this trade, and obviously, you know, there's never going to be 100% win rate, but I think most likely than not, given how we've been down so much, you know, 8 red weekly candles, we're due to turn around. Look at the last time we curved from money flow from green to red on market cipher B here. This was approximately about a 38% correction here. So if we go up 38% from this bottom where it turned over here, 38% would bring us right around 41, 42K, that area. We could hit that by the end of the month. So within the next 7 days, I could easily see you going up to around 35K if this does play out.
So next 7 days, 35K potential. That's definitely a little bit leaning in on the bullish side of things. I was looking at a couple of stories that kind of leaned into that. This one right here, talking about the mega bullish signal, or we'll break down 5 things. This was a kind of a breakdown. Did you see Cowan's video over the weekend to kind of talk about where he was leaning on this? What do you think about that in his analysis with where, at least in the short-term side, would that flow with?
Yeah. On the technicals, I mean, history here, even if we have a scenario, so the 2 main scenarios I'm looking at are either 2018, that's a more bullish scenario, that means we're kind of home free. Look at 2018. We had already hit our bottom by the time this green dot confirmed.
Yeah.
We pumped up a good amount in the short term. I mean, look at this pump right here from the bottom. This was a nice 30% pump, and then he came back down, but that's okay right there. However, the thing you got to worry about, and this would still support a short-term bullish case. Look what happened over here when we had this green dot down here, this low anchor wave. You pumped up a good amount from our local bottom, 60%, but then you came down a lot more.
Yeah.
This number is going to, scare away a lot of people, but keep in mind, Bitcoin's market cap in 2014, 2015 was nothing compared to what it was today. I could see half of 58, 25, 30% correction to the bottom. That would bring in, if you guys aren't familiar with the TA on this, the 200-week moving average is a very strong indication. Look right here where it bounced off of there in our pandemic dump. That would probably bring you down to low 20s, 22. Yeah. And that would be a nice, probably 25, 30% correction from where we are right now. That's probably the worst case scenario in my view, 22K, unless we hit a black swan event, something crazy happens.
Yeah. The other good signs that are leaning into it is you've got Fidelity now soon offering Bitcoin as an option in 401ks, which they're saying that this is going to happen in, potentially early next year, mid next year. I think there could be some runs on a lot of different other investment houses kind of lean into Bitcoin, but also Ethereum too, kind of playing into this. So I think that along with this case right here, world's biggest financial holding, Fidelity, also offering Ethereum custody and trading. So
long-term, very bullish news.
Yeah.
That won't affect what happens in the next few months, but next few years, definitely.
So when you think about the structure, because this is something that we're looking at both from a short-term trader's position and then let's say a midterm, which would be, no pun intended, toward midterms.
Yeah.
So end of year. If you look at those kind of scenarios, because right now, leaning in on sentiment data, at least from our own CPI, we're still looking a little bit bearish on overall sentiment, kind of in alignment with fear and greed, maybe not as dramatic.
Right.
But if you looked at Bitcoin on a 3 to 6 month run, let's look at fourth quarter. What does it look like at that kind of play out?
So what we want to look at here, and this is what I'm kind of thinking may happen. I mean, I think some people got some tricks up their sleeves. They could make the market come up and recover a bit towards midterms to help things out. Help out the politicians there. If we get a green dot on where I circled right here in the weekly and market cipher B, look the last time this happened. This was a nice rally up. How many months was this? This was from December to around June, a 6-month period, which is how far we are approximately away from midterms, maybe a little less than that. That was a 350% increase. It's not going to be that much, I don't think. That would be all-time highs. But what it could be is maybe half of that. It could be maybe, 100 or something like that, low hundreds. You could get it back up to 55K. And that would be kind of equivalent to the rally we had to about 14K in 2019 up to that point. So if you repeat that area, that's a nice rally upward towards November. And I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, just first of all, everyone, make sure and hit like on the video. And if you're not subscribed to our channel, make sure and jump in. Now, we do a lot of stuff like this. These are called market movers, where we'll do some analysis. We'll give you some sentiment data and some TA from Evan. And really, it's not financial advice. The key is to get you guys, at least on your research way, to understanding at least some of the parameters that start to move markets. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people sometimes miss, is that just don't follow the TA by itself, don't follow the sentiment by itself. You have to kind of combine a lot of this along with news and overall indicators as we see the market move. One thing that I would say, though, Evan, is as we see the market as it is right now, in comparison to what's happened with the Fed, interest rates, now we've seen kind of the correction to a pretty significant point, at least in traditional markets. Bitcoin has kind of followed in line with that. Obviously, we've seen some big corrections there. But as we move this out toward the end of the year, still with a potential recession looming. And it doesn't necessarily, I know that the qualifier is a second quarter of negative growth, could likely happen. And not necessarily slowing down on prices. We've got a lot of pressure right now with some other aspects around commodities, with sanctions on Russia, et cetera. With those kind of global economic pressures coming in on Bitcoin or on crypto markets in general, does that give you kind of a downside play?
Yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, I think, when we have one black swan event here, it was the pandemic dump. And we came down to around let me go on the weekly here. Let me just change the setting to our 300 week moving average right here. That brings you right down to that point. So this is kind of worst case scenario, thing, I think, right around 16K. And you would probably need a black swan event. You would need the things you were talking about to happen to really come down that low. And, it probably will recover relatively soon. The other thing, too, is, when the things you're talking about, potential wars and all these things, even in a recession, Bitcoin is decentralized. One of the reasons it was invented was for situations like these, decentralized. So a lot more people may put money into it in those cases. So
there's a lot to look at here too. I think that when you guys are understanding, if you're trading Bitcoin or Ethereum, if you're like me, right now I'm trading very short, tight windows. I'm in and out of the market quite a bit. I'm looking for those indicators that kind of give me either one, the bottom is in, or a potential scenario like what we're dealing with right now, where Bitcoin seems to be on a little bit of a track. And I'll show you some overall data on this here in a second, because I think it breaks down. But if you look at the crypto fear and greed index, still showing extreme fear, which is kind of in alignment with what we've seen on the CPI, not to that extreme, but definitely in alignment. And you kind of see it right here as it starts to volume out. This is the May numbers, and the last time we really saw this was back in 21 around July, and then you kind of look at these numbers back here in 16, really, right before those numbers. So again, these kind of align very similar with what history has done, but at the same time, we've got some new indicators that have really kind of moved in onto the overall market itself. And one of the things I wanted to bring up is this right here, and this was an article, Russia opening to Bitcoin crypto for international payments. Now, again, this doesn't necessarily affect the overall aspect of sanctions and things of that nature because it's still the same, because how you're paying. It's really kind of a question of whether or not Russia is trying to decouple away from the US dollar, potentially leaning in on this, which could lean into Bitcoin and other crypto assets becoming safe havens on that. So worst case scenario, let's say a black swan event does happen, you're seeing this somewhere below a sub 20.
Yeah, I think you'll pop down very similar to the pandemic. You just come down, hit around the 300-week moving average, the sub 20s, 16, 17K for a major buy opportunity. That's where, nobody wants it. That's where everybody's given up. And things would have to get, you need a real panic for that. And I'm talking like, pandemic panic. You need a real panic for that. I don't think it's very likely, but worst case scenario, I would say.
Yeah, I think right now politics are going to play into a lot of this from a slow-moving kind of scenario that may cause some issues and pressures within our own political landscape with cryptocurrency in general. Question will be is how it plays into midterms, how all of this plays into the Fed in terms of market corrections, and also could we see something in terms of the traditional markets starting to get a little bit of revival? I was just looking at an analyst yesterday with Raul Paul, and they were talking about a potential single-digit upside toward the end of the year. So if that is the case, let's assume traditional markets, single-digit upside, where would that, if that were the case, where would that leave Bitcoin in fourth quarter? Do you feel like it is?
Between 50 and 60K,
so
probably.
somewhere in that range. Okay.
And I think it's pretty possible. The way the Fed, with the interest rates, they're able to influence it so much. I think they're just going to do it in a way where you come out positive in single digits for everything, and then everybody's like, oh, everything's okay. You know what I mean?
Hey, Evan, we get a lot of questions on dollar cost averaging. Okay, so, you and I will do some DCA trades, but we also do a lot of swing trades in and out. So let's assume that we go the route of dollar cost averaging. Where is that window of DCA leading? Is it like where we are right now up to a certain point? Where would you
so I would say
stop?
That's a great question. So right here, this is a simple way you could do. When you're in the weekly money flow in the red, this is a great DCA opportunity, a rare one that only comes around every 4 years. If we look historically, it was in the red in our bear. It only really goes in the red, close to the bottom of the bear market. It's like in 2015, 2014. So what I like to do is Monday statistically is the best day to buy Bitcoin. It's usually lower on Monday than any other day of the week statistically, not always obviously, but I like to put in money every Monday, and you want to have a plan for how many weeks you're going to do it for. You could do it every Monday, if you're putting a certain amount of your paycheck or whatever in every Monday here when we're in the red, or you could have a plan where you're just going to map it out. This was from October, and then it went to the green in June, so that was, for a 6-month period. If you have a certain amount of money, you want to invest a certain amount of money, divide it out through that 6-month period so it's even every week. That's a great opportunity, in my opinion. Also, when you're in the red, if it's a time when you're in the green on the weekly and you feel like you missed out, when you're in the red on the daily, especially when you're deep in the red on the daily, I really like to look at that. And then, this is kind of a swing trading opportunity too, because every time you go in the red, when it comes in the green, typically it's higher than your average point. You could double your money a lot of times through this. I mean, even especially back here in our mini bear market in 2021, nice double once you came into the green right there to get out.
Yeah. I want to take a look at ETH also because obviously there's been a lot of movement with ETH here recently. We've seen some additional movement. We're going to do an ETH video to kind of break down some of the big positives for that. But a lot of good news for the ETH 2.0 merge coming in. And as we see more of that and some of the mainnets really launching in, matter of fact, launching in June is what they're anticipating. The likelihood of Ethereum could be a positive thing with continued, evolution of not only the chain and the merge, but also some additional adoption, both from consumer and also traditional, whether it's investment facilities or if we're looking at family offices, things of that nature that start to lean into ETH. ETH today moving kind of in unison with Bitcoin. Where does that look, or what does ETH look like, say, in the next 7 to 10 days?
Yeah, ETH looks pretty good. I mean, we're getting right now, if you look at our market cipher, money flow crossover into the green right here, kind of like, just like the money flow crossover over here. Look at this. This is a big, this could bring for a big jump. Keep in mind in bear markets, Bitcoin, especially in 2019 in that rally, Bitcoin does outperform ETH and pretty much all the altcoins. But ETH isn't really, I don't really consider it as much of an altcoin as it used to be. It's really proven itself now. So we could have a nice 43% correction by 43% jump by the end of the month based on this. 43%, this would be a high number, right around 2,800, right around there. In the next 7 days, in the most bullish of circumstances, I could see 2,400. It is a big jump, maybe a 20% jump from there, around there. In the most bullish of cases, especially with these money flow crossovers, I mean, look how quickly that that jump happened. Things go up slower than they go down usually, so. But I could definitely see 2,300, 2,400.
So good positive news on both Bitcoin and ETH if you're looking in short term. Maybe June is the month that we could see some movement here for sure. The other option obviously is, as we'll start to see, I think, some of the corrections with the U.S. economy. But at the same time, I think also the market. Do you think we're still coupled with traditional markets right now?
To a certain extent, yes, and it does. There are a lot of signs showing traditional markets, like we were saying earlier, are bottoming out now for a nice rally up till midterms. And for obvious reasons, some politicians could really use that. Want to stay in office.
Make sure and put your questions in the sidebar. We're going to try to get to some of those as well. Also, hit the like again on the video because this helps us a lot in understanding what you guys are really interested in. We'll jump to a poll as well before we get into sentiment on Bitcoin and what we've been tracking on the CPI. Let's jump over to the poll real quick and see what we've got here. All right, what's more likely to happen? Bitcoin to 39. Ooh, this is split. And then Bitcoin to 28. A little bit more toward the bearish side here on this, on 60%. With that being the case, if you look at bearish signals, and really to me right now, the only bearish signals we have are global conflict, if we can somehow escalate out of that, or we see more pressure on traditional consumers. Because we had numbers came out this week that credit crisis potentially starting to loom. We had a 1.7% increase on the month, which puts us somewhere in the range of around 17 trillion in overall consumer credit, which is insane.
That's outrageous. Yeah.
We haven't seen these kind of numbers since back in, really since 2008. So with those kind of scenarios kind of playing into this, I don't know, this is the question. Do you feel like that we would hit say a 29 or a 28 before we see the 39?
It's definitely possible. I think, I think it's most likely you come up a little bit higher before you come back to that 28. But the 32K area is pretty big right here. I believe we are hitting a spiral line right here. So we are hitting a major point. If you just roll over with some of these money flow crossovers, you just roll over back into the red here. We could look at the 4-hour too. This is more of a short term. This is pretty high in the green. You just roll over. You could easily come back to, 28. K area. I do think, we've been so sideways in this channel for so long, we got to break up one way or the other. So I think it's more likely we come up maybe to this moving average right here, 35K. That's a big point I'm looking at. Then we come back down rather than just staying in this channel for forever, for 3 weeks going on now.
So you feel still that there's still some upside left in Bitcoin, even with June right now, even if we do correct down to say a 28?
Yeah, most likely, yeah. I mean, if you're coming, it would be very unlikely that we would stay in this channel and just come right back down to 28. I would be bored out of my mind.
For sure. I know what you've got. Yeah. All right, so let's jump over to the CPI because there's some interesting things that have happened with Bitcoin that we haven't reported in about 8 weeks. Recorded in about 8 weeks in terms of the tracking. If you jump to the CPI, if you guys are not part of that, if you go to our website, just click on that crypto power index, you'll line in. If you're a member, you can jump right into our primary, which is the top crypto. That's where we want to go today. We're going to take a look at Bitcoin. And what I want to show here, and this was updated as of yesterday when Bitcoin was on the move. The interesting thing right now, and if you look back here on historically, this goes back 12 data reports, sentiment hovering in at 70.36. Sentiment had not really crossed that point until yesterday, right there at 71.23. So This was a new indicator that we haven't seen in over 30 days when Bitcoin was kind of, like you said, really in a very flat mode.
Right.
Even though we saw a little bit of downward trend back here in early May, which was around 5.9, and also the week of 5.6 during that week. And then it started to slip up a little bit and has been somewhat stable until this week. The question will be whether or not it can continue to hold this, because remember, amplification also accelerating right now from a 64 to a 66.97, almost 3 points, which was big. This is where it gets very interesting to me, though, when amplification starts crossing over, and this happened on the 20th. We had the crossover for amplification, usually indicates that there's a move coming, because this is more of our forward leading indicator with amplification. And then, of course, that's when we saw Bitcoin kind of jump from 28 to what we're seeing right now, trading at almost 32,000. So interesting data. First time we've seen it in, as I said, almost 8 weeks. The question will be whether or not it slips back underneath that barrier of around 70 points on sentiment, because that has a lot of friction, I think, in the essence of price points, which is what you're talking about in terms of just overall volume hitting in. So, all right, so Evan, if we're talking about tokens right now, obviously Cardano on the fly, we just did a big video on that. Make sure and check the video out. I think some of the Cardano people were maybe misunderstanding what I was trying to say about Cardano in the essence of that innovation with Cardano, because I still believe Cardano, along with many others, are innovating at a pretty accelerated speeds. The one thing that I would disagree with on Cardano is that some of the projects that are truly innovating have not seen scale. Now, granted, whether you look at Solana or you're looking at AVAX or many other projects out there who have had some innovations and some train wrecks happen, they've done it because of scale. And scalability, I think, is going to be a big key with some of the altcoins. Evan, when you're looking at altcoins right now, ADA just blew up.
Right.
We were reporting this on, I think, last Friday. And I kind of put my money where my mouth was. I did a big trade. I took 60% of that trade, put it all in Cardano, prior move, and of course it jumps. I put 40% in Solana at the same time. Solana took a nice move, but didn't have the big move that Cardano did. Full disclosure, I sold out of Cardano on that particular trade this morning.
Nice job.
So good swing trade over the weekend. But the question for you is altcoins that you're watching right now in June.
So the thing with altcoins that we got to first realize is that in bear markets like this, even when you have relief, the Bitcoin dominance still tends to go up. You will get some pumps in altcoins, but Bitcoin is usually king in these instances.
Yep.
I like a lot of ones with a sub $10 billion market cap right now. It might be a little bit above that right now. Polkadot I love.
Yep.
Zcash I like, especially with the things you're talking about. Black Swan events, privacy, coins could be big. Avalanche is really good right now. Those have a lot of good bang for your buck because they're smaller market caps. I mean, Cardano, that's a big market cap. You're not going to get, those crazy returns that we
it just
like to look for.
XRP as well.
Yeah,
so
that's big too.
Just happened. But you're right. Here's Avalanche at 7 billion right there. You've got Polygon coming in at 5 billion. That might be an interesting
Matic I like. Atom I love. You could earn a lot of interest on Atom.
Near Protocol coming in at 4. That's another one to take a look at. And most of these are on our CPI. Here's Chainlink. We just added to the CPI. That's at 3.4. There's Atom right there at 2.9. So you're right. There's a lot of these projects right now. And again, some of these are not moving too much. Chainlink up a little bit here right now, 5% on the week. You've got Atom down a little bit. This might be a potential right here to be watching. Flow, if you guys are moving into there, Flow's been on the move today for almost 5%. So some nice little moves here. Do you feel like these are all indicative of the typical scenario of Bitcoin takes a move, altcoins seem to follow?
Yeah.
So just not decoupling at all.
It's not going to be probably the altcoin season that we've seen in the past usually because usually the Bitcoin dominance continues to go up. Bitcoin usually bottoms out with the altcoins, but once it bottoms out, Bitcoin will outperform it, especially people newer to the space. Maybe you haven't been around long enough to see it, but there are times where Bitcoin really becomes king and the Bitcoin dominance goes up while altcoins don't do as well. They still will go up, but sometimes you get those little pumps and then you sold out, you take your profits quickly, you know what I mean?
We might want to try to poll the audience real quick on, like you're saying, an under $10 billion market cap. So that would be AVAX. Let's go with Matic. Let's go with Near Protocol, and then jump into Chainlink and Atom.
Yeah.
Any one of those, I think, would be, if we throw up a poll, we'll try to get to it while we take some questions. But all those are pretty healthy projects too.
Yeah, Chainlink I have a little bit concerns on because it's just underperformed so much. But you know,
time.
if you're a gambler, it is very cheap.
It's an interesting
Yeah.
one. All right, let's get to a few sentiments on HBAR. Let's see if we can pull that up for you guys. When we get in, we are covering more and more on, and this is one that we've looked at. I probably should pull that one for you guys separately, but this is one that we're looking at adding to the overall CPI. HBAR, there's a couple of them. I'd love to kind of get you guys' inputs, because it takes a lot for us to add something to the power index, mainly because the amount of data we have to haul in to analyze it 3 times a week, where we drop data every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, unless Monday's a holiday, and then we'll drop it on Tuesday. But that is one that I'm looking at right now. Phantom, what are your thoughts on Phantom?
Phantom is cheap. You know, it's the same with Chainlink, very cheap. There are some rare on a lot of these altcoins, you know, especially HBAR, like we were saying, rare. You know, you have a green dot on the weekly, which is that marked, you know, your bear market bottom in 2018. What we're seeing though is for Bitcoin, especially back in 2014, it didn't work out and we came down lower. So that's kind of the debate right here. But they are very cheap, but again, they could crash probably up to, I hate to say it, up to probably another 70%, 80% from here, some of them.
That's the concern I have, Mirage, I have with Phantom right now, is if you look at the Phantom sentiment, it's not tracing with the move this week on the market, because you've got 65.55 on the overall, and you've got sentiment starting to dip on Phantom slightly. But the big one right here is the 59.72 to 59.81. No real movement on amplification, so it's getting a little flat. I would say this is either in for a little bit of a dip, or we're waiting for some price action to occur, which usually means Bitcoin is going to pull it along if that were to happen. Sipowo, let's go to, what about XRP? XRP, we've done a lot of videos on, and we do a ton on XRP. Definitely one that I'm watching all the time. I'm invested in XRP. Edward, Polkadot, you like Polkadot, like it. What are your thoughts on DOT?
That's in my top 5. I like DOT. I think it's a great product. I think that's pretty undervalued. I mean, it's kind of the same boat as Avalanche, kind of the same boat as Cosmos. I mean, in this type of environment, you know, Bitcoin may outperform it for a bit, but there are some rare bullish signs. I mean, you look at your right here, market cipher B, your VWAP's coming up. First time ever, you're about to get that double green dot happening. You might have it on the 6th day already. And these, you have it on the 6th day. So either, you know, this is the bottom and you're kind of home free from here, or we have one last leg down to probably $5, $6 here.
That's the concern I have with DOT right there, is that the long-term sentiment is leaning downwards still, but there may be a swing trade in for DOT that could happen. So right now, it's just like Matic. I feel like Matic's going to be on a swing trade right now, because again, DOT's kind of flat right here, but it is sentiment and amplification is starting to come together on that, what usually indicates a little bit of move. So we're going to be watching that one.
Yeah.
Axie moving like crazy here today and yesterday. So that's a good one. I own a lot of Axie, so I'm continuing to go in on that. Did not buy on this last dip over the weekend, but last week I was getting into Axie still. Do you think UST will regain its peg? I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. Yeah. I think Luna is just one of those projects. It's going to take a ton to recover from. Anything that gets a cataclysmic meltdown like that, I just don't know that we get, even though it's already, I mean, the market cap has already moved on Luna 2.0 quite a bit, but you know, we're going to do a video on that for you guys, so be on the watch for this week. Is Tron a scam? That's a big one. Depends on who you talk to.
Yeah, depends on who you talk to. I don't think it's a scam, but it's definitely not in my top 5. That's what I would say.
Zilliqa, we've had a lot of videos on Zilliqa. I just have kind of stepped away from Zilliqa as my Metaverse bag. We still report on Zilliqa often, but it's not in our main structure of CPI analysis that we do. We're really looking in at projects like Sandbox, Axie, and of course Gala. When will the altcoins follow BTC? I think we need a big breakout for that to happen.
Yeah, in the next bull run, they'll start to really outperform it.
Okay, status of Luna Classic, Deathbed. Lamar, what about Grayscale ETF? So any ETF that lands, and we really get a true spot ETF that happens, all bets are off, because at that time it starts to open up the floodgates of traditional markets into Bitcoin.
Right.
Because in an ETF, it is a one-to-one, meaning if they're investing, they have to actually buy the asset. It's not like other leveraged funds that you do not have to buy the asset. How high do you think Cardano could jump with the Vasil hard fork, 1.45 before going back down? Cardano may still have some life in it. I think this has been a good run for Cardano during this period of time. It's good timing too, I think. But again, with Cardano, a couple more innovations, and Twitter. I listen to Twitter a lot. I don't take a lot of it seriously, but I do watch where the movers and shakers are going within the Cardano community. There are some very interesting innovations happening. The key here, as I said, scale. If you can get to scale on any one of them, it's going to be interesting to see it happen. All right, Gala, I like it. Are you trading on Gala?
Gala? No, I haven't traded. There are some good fundamentals on that. You can earn quite a bit of interest on that. It's on my radar, but it's not in my top 10 or top 5.
Neo Crypto, Solana, and Near. I traded Solana this past weekend and just kept it in this particular case because I'm looking for a longer play for Solana. XCAD, we need to probably do a video on that for you guys. Do you see Bitcoin hitting 20,000 this year if we see a major hit?
So you need a black swan event, in my view, to go under 22K. So I don't see it happening. I'm a more optimistic person, but it's some of the way some people are talking to. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
I don't think the odds are very high.
Robert F., thoughts on Algo? Algorand, I think, is still a great project. We've had them on the show a couple of times. I like what Macaulay is doing over there. Overall, from a tech standpoint, they're very advanced. The key here, I think, is going to be whether or not Algorand can continue its partnership layer and really start to get, again, back to innovation that works at scale. Because any one of these projects, whoever is the first mover in Web3, because remember, if you watch or follow Chris Dixon from A16Z, he kind of mentions this a lot, is that a lot of the innovation that happened in the early 2000s came from companies that were emerging in that period of time. And many of them we've talked about in this show. He thinks that this period of time is like that. So Web3 is about to explode. I think Algorand is probably one of those companies that could break out.
Yeah, it's an Italian cryptocurrency. There's going to be one of them that makes it.
I like it. All right, 5.0, Chris, is there still a high sentiment on the metaverse space in crypto? It's up and down right now. Sentiment, I'll show you on that overall. And I think we're going to get to the poll real quick. Let's jump to that poll while I pull up that sentiment real quick. All right, so in any of these. Matic is the big one. Very interesting.
Project,
yeah, and Matic may be on the move. They had a lot of innovation, or a lot of news from Davos. A lot of people talking about, adopting Matic, looking at Matic as a vehicle. They had a couple of little interesting tools that have started to pop. But again, it goes back to scale. I talk about this all the time. Let's jump up into the overall CPI home and jump over here to Metaverse. Let's take a look at the dashboard. And Metaverse has been slightly up, and right there you can kind of see it. There's the jump back up to where it's somewhat positioned. And again, I think that's because of Axie, Gala, Sandbox, a couple of the staples of what we're seeing in Metaverse. So to answer your question, we've got a little bit of an upward move here, but it's still well below where it was just 30 days ago. Just look at this right here, Metaverse 30 days ago, around 71, and it's still hovering around 66 as an average score for sentiment. So not necessarily great. All right, what do you think about Omi Vivi? Of course, Darth Vader hit a home run with Omi this weekend, so I missed that completely. I wish I'd have been on that one. Sandbox, you like Sandbox?
Yeah, I mean, out of the gaming tokens, some of them will go to zero, some of them will make it.
Yeah.
Sandbox is higher up there. I mean, VRA is another one. Ultra I like,
So Veracity, we just had the Veracity team on this last week.
Right.
I was pretty impressed with what they've done so far, but really kind of their innovation. But I'm still looking at Veracity as a project that fixes a problem for major publishers. And if you think about evolution of bots and what Veracity is trying to do, they've got some cool stuff. Man, the questions just keep pouring in. All right, Nick O. I bet the time the ETF will around with a halving. That could happen. That could happen. When is the best time to scalp Bitcoin? Scalp. You're a good scalper.
When it's really sideways, when you're just bouncing off of, this would be, I did a scalp this morning, actually. Had a nice little scalp I'll show you on my chart right off of this general area. It got stopped out in profit right now, but right off of, with this blood diamond right here,
Yep.
right down there, took some profits at right around the point, just hit the first take profit and then stopped out in profit. So it's little trades like that. Also, when you hit these spiral lines right there, and then you see that green dot here, that's a, you see a green dot right there. Just
Yep.
go right in. So
Bingo.
you're looking for bullish divergences, especially when you're hitting areas, but spiral lines are really big with this. I removed some of them because people complained about I have too many spiral lines, but
I remember.
there's quite a few.
I remember. Yeah. So, hey, listen, guys, if you're new to our channel and you're saying, wait a minute, what is all these charts and all that kind of stuff? Evan has a course that you can actually take, and we leave a link in it every time he comes in and does TA on the show here. There's a link in our description. It'll take you to his channel. It jumps in a lot on Market Cipher, which he can explain more about how to use it. We kind of use it here, but Evan is, I would consider, one of the experts on Market Cipher out there, so make sure and jump onto that. And that'll help you understand how to scalp trade, maybe how to get in and do some overall analysis and TA on when to trade and get in and out of these things. ApeCoin, we added to the CPI here recently, so good stuff there. What do you think about Ape and Otherside long term? I still am very bullish on ApeCoin and Otherside as a whole. When you think about Metaverse and the brand consistency that they bring to the plate, I think they're going to be here for a long time. Man, there's a lot of stuff here. Glimmer. We've had that subject on the show before. Again, when you get into the Polkadot ecosystem, just overall, I think a lot of people need to look at that and understand parachains. What I would recommend is do a lot more research on parachains and the projects that are in it, whether it's Moonriver, Glimmer, etc., that you guys want to do. All right, ADA, XRP, ETH, Matic, which of them is better for a long-term hold, in your opinion? ADA, XRP, ETH, and Matic.
It depends how much risk-reward ratio you want. I mean, best risk-reward ratio there, in my opinion, would be Matic. That's the smallest market cap there, and you probably earn a good amount of interest on it. Least risk would be ETH, and then ADA. I mean, XRP would probably be the riskiest. I mean, I would be more comfortable with that after they win the lawsuit, get back on big exchanges. But Matic out of those, I mean, I would, for me, Matic.
I like it. Man, tons happening here. Fidelity, yeah, that's going to definitely, I think, move a little bit, but I don't know if it's going to be a big one for sure. Man, you guys just keep coming in. We're going to try to get to more questions on another show, though, because we got a lot going on here. Of course, with as you guys know, make sure and jump into the Diamond Circle. That's the easiest way to stay connected to the channel. It connects you into not only some of our most recent content, in case you missed stuff here, but it also gives you access to some of our deep dive research. We do AMAs on there. We do a lot of additional research that will drop into the Diamond Circle. It's also your gateway into the Power Index itself, where you can really start to dive into sentiment analysis and our own videos of where we break these down on an ongoing basis. So lots happening out there. If you guys, of course, want to reach me, it's out on Twitter at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.